Hold on to your hats, folks. Did you ever wonder about the dark secrets of the antebellum period? The economic system of that time was built on the broken backs and crushed spirits of slaves treated as objects rather than human beings. Brace yourself, because we're peeling back the layers of this horrifying era and shining a spotlight on the one aspect often overlooked: the exploitation of enslaved women, especially within the vile institution of breeding farms. When laws of the land dehumanized enslaved people, slavery became an accepted norm. Hard to believe, right? Well, it's actually true. And here's a shocking twist. The prohibition of importing slaves didn't dismantle the institution of slavery. Instead, it enhanced the value of slaves within the country. The once prestigious Thomas Jefferson, a slave owner himself by the way, recognized the economic importance of slavery, even converting his home state of Virginia into a thriving hub of slave production. The profits surpassed those from tobacco. An ugly truth indeed. The profits surpassed those from tobacco. An ugly truth indeed. By the end of the 18th century, a spark of hope ignited. The transatlantic slave trade was on its last legs. The man of the hour, William Wilberforce, rallied support, forming the Committee for the Abolition of Slave Trade, and they did it. They ended the slave trade with the Slavery Trade Act of 1807. However, you won't believe this, but despite the significant development, the crops produced by the slave labor kept money flowing into America's coffers. With political power riding on this, the South was emboldened to challenge the Union. Now get this. The ban on slave importation in 1808, instead of ending slavery, created a sinister internal market. Black women were forced into systemic childbearing, their wombs turned into commodities for profit. It might sound unbelievable, but it actually happened. Freedom has dangled as a sickening reward for bearing 15 children. Girls as young as 12 were forced into motherhood. A chilling system that treated people as products. Are you ready for more? The systematic breeding farms used young women as breeding machines. Their lives were a relentless cycle of forced pregnancies and childbearing. They bore children often fathered by their own masters. Can you imagine anything more horrific? Slaves called stockmen were brought in to impregnate female slaves. Farms had more enslaved women than men, simply to maintain the profitable breeding industry. The scale of profit derived from the abhorrent practice of enforced breeding is truly staggering. Some breeders amassed immense wealth through these reprehensible policies. Astonishingly, one trader boasted of selling a staggering 6,000 slave children within a single year. Even figures like Jefferson proudly acknowledged the financial gains resulting from the birth of slave children. Slavery itself was a lucrative enterprise, with the southern slave trade alone valued at approximately $4 billion, surpassing the worth of gold or farmland. These harrowing details shed light on the dark underbelly of a system that dehumanized and exploited individuals for economic gain. It serves as a haunting reminder of the immense profits amassed through the suffering and commodification of human lives during this painful part of history. Now prepare to be astonished by a revelation that will leave you all speechless. Rather than eradicating the slave industry, the ban on the transatlantic slave trade breathed new financial life into it. Slaves became the collateral for loans, and these mortgages were bundled together to create bonds that were sold globally. Shockingly, individuals in countries where slavery had been abolished profited from these bonds backed by the value of enslaved people. The irony of this turn of events is undeniable. The so-called enlightened world found itself complicit in an evil that it had vehemently outlawed. This unsettling truth exposes the dark undercurrents of exploitation and greed that persisted even after the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade, forcing us to confront the deeply entrenched roots of systematic injustice. And there you have it, folks, the grim truth of the Antebellum Period, an era where humans were reduced to commodities for economic gain in the horrifying practice of breeding farms. The scale and brutality of this exploitation is a stark reminder of a cruel past, the echoes of which still reverberate throughout history. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to welcoming you back for our next exciting adventure.